We are extremely excited to announce our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. Everyone knows and loves their hotels and casinos, but now you can use the top-rated Hard Rock Bet sportsbook to place all your NFL bets this season. Hard Rock Bet is the only legal sportsbook in the state of Florida and is also available in Arizona, Ohio, New Jersey, Indiana, Tennessee, Virginia, Illinois, and Colorado, with more states to come. You can also play on Hard Rock Bet's online casino if you are in New Jersey. As we gear up for the NFL season, sign up for Hard Rock Bet and make a $5 bet, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Head over to Hard Rock Bet, sign up, and make your first deposit today. What is going on, everybody? How are we doing? Barn burner of a Monday night game. The Kansas City Chiefs are back. They're now 5-3. They destroy the Commanders, who are missing their quarterback, and their season does not look like it's going to go well. They're now 3-5. Their schedule gets kind of hard. Hell of a run, though. You know, they were a little ahead of schedule last year, taking a step back. Maybe it benefits them in the big picture. A couple other things I wanted to hit on. Something that kind of slipped my mind last night in terms of Gutekunst and LaFleur and the Packers. I don't think I quite gave them enough credit of what was really on display last night. Obviously, the main story of Brian Kelly getting fired. And I just have some overall thoughts when it comes to coaching, as well as the reaction to Nick Mangold, who passed away over the weekend, which was extremely sad. One of the better players, of my adult life, and just a pretty legendary guy who seemed. We'll talk about it, but before we dive in to some football and a man named Patrick Mahomes, I got to tell you about my friends. I got to tell you about my partners, the official ticketing app of this podcast, GameTime. Do you want to go to one of these football games? Do you want to go to an NFL game? Do you want to go to a college game? Well, here's the thing. GameTime has exclusive discounts like zone deals. You just pop up, type in the team you want to see, type in the stadium you want to go to. You get flash deals. You get the ability when you click on the ticket, there are no hidden fees. It tells you the actual price. How often on one of these other ticketing sites do you find where you want to sit? Do you click on it? And then you go to check out, and it adds 30%. You're like, what is going on? That's not here. No fooling around here. Great seat views. The lowest prices guaranteed. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with professional football. Excuse me. Let me reread that. That was not great by your boy. Take the guesswork out of buying professional football tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create an account and redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go download the GameTime app today. You guys never get to see the sausage being made sometimes when I'm reading ads here to send off to my people. And there have been iPads thrown, Stanleys thrown, pens, notebooks. I get very angry sometimes. Some of these ad reads, the GameTime one, I do with the back of my hand. But it can be a challenge here. They're not as easy as they look. Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, that was as easy as it looked. Very weird start to the game. I mean, extremely weird. The first quarter is one of the more bizarre experiences I've had this year in a primetime game. We had a pick off Debo's face. We had Patrick Mahomes throwing a pick to Lattimore, who I think would be considered like universally washed. Most people, even Troy Aikman was like, God, he really needed that one. And then Travis Kelce had one like bounce off his hands, get intercepted. So we had like 3 interceptions within what felt like the first 20 minutes of game time. And it's like, what is going on here? And then the game played out. and the Kansas City Chiefs put the pedal to the metal. Mahomes threw 3 touchdowns. Rashee Rice has to delay a game penalty, throwing the ball at someone's face. Coach Reid goes, "What did you do?" And he tries to show him what he did. And Coach Reid didn't even say anything back. He's like, "Are you serious?" He's like, "You're actually telling me what you did?" But he did it. He got a delay game, but it didn't matter. He's an elite player. Travis has the fountain of youth. Clearly, all the wide receiver help. Marquise Brown playing all season long. Juju Smith, adding Rashee Rice back. Worthy's now healthy. Their running game's awesome. I mean, they're missing their best 2 offensive linemen tonight. Trey Smith is one of the better interior offensive linemen in the NFL. I think they said on the broadcast he missed his second game of his 5-year career tonight. And Josh Simmons, who's been gone for the last several games with a unknown personal matter, but I think people have reported that signs point to him coming back in the relatively near future. So they will get their starting left tackle back and their starting star guard back to go along with their high-end center. It's like their offensive line's pretty solid now. This team's coming. And it kind of hits you when you're watching them play. Like, this team's going to be in the AFC Championship game again. It had a feel to that one Patriot team. I forget the year. It might have been 14. Could have been 15. They started like 2-2. And I think Albert Breer asked a question in a press conference. It might have been on a Monday night game where they had lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. If Tom Brady was in was there a threat for him to get benched and Jimmy Garoppolo to play? And Belichick's reaction was classic. But then the dust settled and they were in the Super Bowl. I think that was the year either they came back to Atlanta or beat the Rams. I don't remember the exact year, but kind of how it felt. The Chiefs start 0-2. Everyone's like, they're done. That looked a little weird. And even when they lost the Jags game, that is a game they always won. And obviously, Mahomes throws the 99-yard pick six. It's starting to feel like it's not really their year. And then as we get to Halloween, it's like they're going to be, especially if they win this weekend against the Bills. If they win this weekend against the Bills, going on the road, take down the Bills, who have played really well against them and beat them countless times in the regular season, and you go 6-3 into the bye, I think depending on what happens over these next several weeks with the Colts, and who knows, can the Colts maintain a 15-win pace? Maybe they can. I think the Chiefs immediately become a threat to be the number 1 seed. But most importantly, this isn't just a playoff team. This is a contender. And this is a Super Bowl contender. And, they have the most important combination in the NFL, which I would say most people would say they have the number 1 version of this. The coach, the quarterback, and the defensive coordinator. Because their head coach is the offensive coordinator. So whoever your 2 coordinators are, typically now in the NFL, one of them, for a lot of these teams, it's their offensive coordinator. McVay, Shanahan, Sean Payton, LaFleur, right? Kevin O'Connell. And then their defensive coordinator is extremely important. Flores, Shula, Sala, Spags, and the quarterback. Well, they got arguably one of the best quarterbacks of all time that I would have told you were probably need to put down the drugs maybe a month ago. But you watch him tonight, and you've watched him the last several games, now that he's got his arsenal of weapons back, and you go, that's the best player in the league. And the MVP odds have shown, how is Patrick so high in the MVP odds? How is Patrick so high in the MVP odds? Kind of hit me tonight, well, he wins next week in Buffalo, and he ends up throwing several touchdowns a game moving forward. This guy's going to win the MVP of the league. And here's what he has going for him, because sometimes narratives matter. It really helped Josh last year, right? Because, in fairness, he had never won it. And he was clearly one of the best players in the league. He was in that trio or quattro of Burrow, Lamar, Mahomes, and him. They were the leaders of the pack, and he was playing great. He probably could have won it previous years, but there was a lot of momentum for him. Just like early in his career, there was a lot of momentum for Patrick. Then we completely shifted. We had gone all in with Josh and Lamar, rightfully so. You could argue there were times those guys were playing better than Patrick Mahomes. It wasn't really debatable. Now, he flipped a switch in the playoffs, so did his team, and they would beat them in the playoffs. but it's a regular season award, and those other guys earned it. Well, this year, especially after the 0-2 start, everyone kind of wrote him off. I was probably, I don't know if I want to say I'm guilty, but I definitely thought, like, yeah, this could just be a 9-8 season. Understandable. You got some injuries, little transition. You're missing some players. Xavier Worthy gets hurt the first game. Your defense has some holes. Chris Jones is going to pick his spots. No, that's not what's going to happen. And this is why when you have Josh Allen, when you have Lamar Jackson, when you have Patrick Mahomes, when you have Joe Burrow, your chip's all going to be in the middle of the table every single year. Because as long as they're on the field, they give you a chance. And this guy, the reason we talk about him in such a high regard, like, I love football. I love watching good quarterback play. I loved watching Marcel Reed on Saturday night in Louisiana with that performance. It was just spectacular. I admire it. I appreciate how difficult it is on the road in these environments. I understand the pressure of playing in these primetime games. And to watch Mahomes, and this is what, being critical of some young quarterbacks and stuff, you have to do the easy stuff well, right? Like when your running back hits a wheel route and it's 3rd and 5, and that is schemed up and he will walk to a first down. You not only need to hit him, you need to hit him in stride. Patrick Mahomes does that shit with his eyes closed. Quick outs, slants, timing routes on 2nd and 8, 3rd and 9, stuff that is going to get you the first down or not a first down, and the difference in punting and keeping the chains and the drive going. That's what he majors in that. But his ability and what he's really shown over the last couple weeks is like, kind of feels like we're getting that throwback, what made the guy kind of legendary. We called him Farvian. We called him like the Steph Curry of football. And he's doing that again. And it's harder to do that when you don't have players to throw it to. And Stuckey was on my podcast a couple weeks ago, and he brought up a good point. He's like, I think Travis was just a product of the receivers were injured, and everyone kind of condensed in the middle of the field and took that away from him. Well, when you got Hollywood Brown playing well, when you got Juju Smith playing well, when you bring back Rice, you got the speed of Worthy. When your running backs can catch the ball, it just opens the field a little bit. So all of a sudden you're watching Travis Kelce. He just looks a little bit younger than he did previous years. Maybe he's not. Maybe it's just simply he has more room to operate. And listen, is he as quick and explosive as he was 4 or 5 years ago? Of course not. But he's so smart. Even on the one big play today, what's he doing? He's in on pass protection. What does Mahomes do? He's looking around. He's looking around. Nothing's there. All of a sudden, Travis realizes there's no one there. Slip out. Mahomes, elite instincts. Looks, dumps him the ball off. Huge gain. Maybe in his younger years, he scores a touchdown on that play. But I'm watching Patrick Mahomes and I go, that's MVP. I mean, so the Chiefs, can they win the AFC? I think we all acknowledge, yes, they can. This version of them, when you have Andy Reid, when you got Spags scheming it up, and you got quarterback play at this level, even if you're going to be, let's say Denver wins the division, and they're a 12-win team, and Denver's a 13-win team, and you're the 5 seed. You think you're worried if you're Kansas City about going on the road and take care of business? You think you're scared to go on the road to play the Pittsburgh Steelers? Of course not. So I think the Chiefs have really figured it out. And I think it starts and really ends with this quarterback. I feel like he flipped a switch. I really do. And it's easier to make plays when you have more talent around you. But he feels a little just more dialed in and he's just playing at a higher level. He does this in the playoffs, but over the last couple years in the regular season, it could just be a little hit or miss. In the version we're seeing right now, like this is the first couple years when he started, like doing the miraculous stuff. And the talent around him is really good, and they're just playing at a high level. Now, obviously Washington's not very good. Like I look at Washington like a 6 or 7 win team. But what does a good team do to a bad team? They destroy them. And that's exactly what happened tonight. 28-7. Let's just pick up some stats here. Chiefs, 26 first downs. Washington, 14. The Chiefs could be a little bit better on 3rd down. They were 4-10. But good on 4th down. That's another thing with Washington. And we talked about this over the course of the season with Stuckey on the gambling aspect. They were so good on fourth down last year. They were like 22 of 24. Or 22 of 25, whatever the number was. It was insane because of the quantity of the times they went for it, but of obviously the times that they executed it. And you watch them now, and obviously with Mariota, there's a big difference with Jaden Daniels, but the magic's just kind of gone. And this is what's so difficult. I was thinking this on Saturday, watching Alabama play. Think how many years that program has been the game that every team on their schedule circles. I mean, we're going on easily over 15. Like once Nick Saban really established the program in like 2010. So for all the 2010s and this entire decade, including right now, every single team that plays them, every non-conference team and every SEC team circles them. For the Chiefs now, since Patrick Mahomes, like they were a good team before Patrick got there. When Patrick got there, they accelerated to just an elite operation. So for the last 6 or 7 years, every team on the schedule, obviously divisional teams, but every non-divisional team you play, it's arguably the biggest regular season game of their season. You are getting everyone's best fight. You are walking into the ring, and they are going to give you however many Mike Tyson rights they have. And some might have more than others, right? Obviously, Washington doesn't have much tonight. But tonight, if you're Washington, even with your backup quarterback, you're 3-4. This was a kitchen sink game. And this would have been even if they were a fully loaded team. It's a really big deal to play the Kansas City Chiefs. When you are forever LeBron James or Steph Curry or Tiger Woods, you're getting everyone's best shot every single time you play them because you are their biggest deal. And I'm watching the Chiefs tonight just thinking, like, that's really hard. It's why I always say, like, it's really hard to maintain a high level of play as a team, as an individual player, as a coach. Like, anyone at the highest level can have a good game. Hell, most guys can have a good season. But being a great player is doing it year in, year out. What they say tonight, Travis Kelce, that was his 100th career touchdown, including the playoffs. I think it was like his 83rd during the regular season. You know how long that guy has been a good player? I mean, we're going on well over a decade of basically every year you're getting, I would say on average, 85 catches. And I bet he had a stretch where he was scoring 7, 8 touchdowns a year. I mean, basically since he didn't really play as a rookie, his second year, 67 catches, 72 catches, 85 catches, 83 catches, 100 catches, 97 catches, 105 catches, 92 catches, 110 catches, 93 catches, 90 fucking 7 catches last year. Every single year, he's clocking in to kick ass. Even when people like me, he's lost a step. I lost a step, 97 catches. 97 catches. Now, I get it. There's an extra game. We throw the ball more, especially with a coach like Andy Reid. It's going to be different than playing for some of his coaches. But still, do you know how difficult that is? And I watched, this is what makes the league so hard. Washington, I'm guilty of this. It's like they got Jaden Daniels. Incredible player. It's like I like C.J. Stroud a lot his rookie year. Who didn't? I felt like Jaden was on a different level when you factored in the dual threat. It was just like they got Dan Quinn, this established coach. They got Adam Peters, who's been groomed to be this great GM. You got Bob Myers, who's in there giving tips. You got Magic Johnson hanging out with Josh Harris. I'm like, this thing's a rocket ship. Year 2, they'll probably go like 6-11 or 7-10. I get it. They had some injuries, but still, it's like that's how fast it can. The Chiefs now, since Andy Reid has got there, I think they've had one down year where they missed the playoffs. They went 9-7. One. It is really difficult because last year Washington didn't have this. They got to fly under the radar. They had been one of the shittiest franchises in the league for 2 decades. So no one takes them that seriously, even if they have this special quarterback. Now, by the end of the year, you're kind of, okay, this team's got a winning record. Then all of a sudden, you're in the NFC Championship game. It's one of the great seasons in like franchises had in 30 years. It's like all the hype coming back this year. And now you're just getting throttled. And in fairness, like it's not, I'm not blaming these guys for like feeling themselves or getting the disease of me. Some of it's just, Jaden's been banged up. Obviously, McLaurin's missed some games. I have nothing but respect for Bobby Wagner. Absolute badass. he's a liability now. I mean, you see his speed trying to cover guys. I mean, he used to be one of the best line. He's a Hall of Famer. He's one of the great players of his generation. But this is the thing in football, and once you lose a step at linebacker in the way the league is played now, it's a space league. They use running backs in the passing game. You got to cover people, and you just feel like Dan Quinn talked about it. Like we don't feel as fast. Well, your middle linebacker is not as fast, and your pass rush isn't as good. You're depending on Javon Kinlaw, who's a solid player, but like that's one of your main guys on defense. Lattimore, who's had a really bad season. They've depended on some guys who've fallen off. Now, McLaurin, you saw tonight, made like two of the better catches of the year. I mean, the catch on the sideline where Mariota throws the lollipop to keep his foot. One, it's just incredible touch on the pass. But to slow his feet down like he's Chris Carter and catch that thing, that was awesome. It was so good. The referee was literally standing there and was like, out of bounds, out of bounds. They showed the replay. It's like, that's pretty easily in bounds. But honestly, when it happened in real time, you're like, that he didn't catch that. No chance. And then he did. Same thing on the one down the sideline. You're like, that's out of bounds. Then you see, you're like, no, he caught it. This is where I defended Terry McLaurin. It's like, listen, there is no way that I'm going to make the same money as Deebo Samuel on this team because I'm a dynamic outside wide receiver. This is no shade of Deebo. I have a lot of respect for him, but like, if you are building a team based on who's better, gets paid more, you got to pay Terry McLaurin more. And I thought Deebo would have a big impact for him. Doesn't quite feel like he hasn't been terrible, but they're just missing a little juice. And at the end of the day, like Mahomes doesn't miss games. And that's the other thing with Jaden. And we talked about this last week. They get back to the Herm Edwards thing, like the best ability is availability. And that's obviously not true. The best ability is like your actual ability, right? Like some guys have way less ability than Chris Jones. So it's like, yeah, you can put him at defensive tackle. They're going to get stoned by centers and guards. So like you got to have ability. But at that level, like most guys have a lot of ability. But then if you're not available, like Brock Purdy might end up playing like 3 games this season. They just paid him $200 million. Like, that's a disaster. It's no one's fault. Like, obviously, no one's trying to get injured, but it's just, that's a problem, And especially, it's one thing when you have catastrophic injuries, nothing you can do. When it's just these injuries, like, what's the reason for this? Is it something you're doing, putting yourself in harm's way? Because all of our jobs now, coaching staff, front office, a lot of players on the team are tied to you. Like, we go as you go. Ask everyone in Kansas City what it's like to have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid in the front seat driving that bus. It's been glorious. Financially, wins and loss wise, the moments they've had, to just everything about it. But, like, you got to be able to depend on the guy. And that's going to be something like if Jaden wants to have this great career, which he has the physical capabilities, he's got to be on the field. And you watch Mariota, who I looked up, fascinating career, right? When he came out of college, and I always give like the college guys a little grace on this. I remember having Joel Klatt on the radio show and Rick Neuheisel too. They both thought he was like the next Steve Young. It's like, I don't know. I like Mariota. Who doesn't? He's like all-time great character guy. Could be a little inaccurate, when you really watched him at Oregon, guys weren't wide open. But he was an easy guy to root for. But he's a good example. I looked it up today. He's made $83 million. And he hasn't been a starter in years. If you are a good guy, right, and you're on that tier that, like, I'm not going to be a top 12, 15 quarterback, but people are going to love me. You can make a lot of money in the NFL. And, like, at the end of the day, if Mariota has started a lot of games, you're going to lose a lot of them. But he's got another year after this, maybe a couple. When it's all said and done, he might get a couple more $5 million contracts. He might make $100 million by the time he's 36, 37 years old as a backup quarterback. And I think that's a good lesson for life. Like, be a good person. Treat people well. Be someone, like, part of being valuable in certain industries is, like, be a guy that other people want to be around. Ask Joe Flacco or people that have employed Joe Flacco what that means. They like being around Joe Flacco. Well, I said this about Mark Sanchez. I always heard that about Mark Sanchez. Remember, he had a long career as a backup. People loved him. And there's Chase Daniel was a guy that played for like 15 years in the NFL. I think he had like 4 career starts, made like $40 million. So the value of Mariota is not that he's a good player. Because most guys, if you have to become a starter when you're the backup and Mariota has to start 8 games this year, they're going to lose the majority of them, right? And they basically pay him to not play. And there are some guys like Mac Jones you can win some games with. And Mac Jones is a good example of that. Mac Jones can become a guy that can just have a long career making $8 to $10 million as the best backup in the league. And maybe one team, 1 year will give him like 1 year, $20 million to be a bridge quarterback so he can inflate his overall earnings over the course of his career. And you can't turn that down. But like, if you're one of those guys, I love this guy in the quarterback room. I want this guy around my young quarterback because most bad teams are always looking to draft young quarterbacks. Well, who do you want around a young quarterback? A high-level guy. What did the Chiefs do when they basically inserted Patrick Mahomes when they traded Alex Smith? Brett Veach and Andy Reid had a goal to find a backup quarterback. The guy had to be married. They wanted a mature guy around their young quarterback. Who'd they sign and hire? Chad Henne. What'd Chad Henne do? Make millions of dollars for years being the backup for Patrick Mahomes. And is beloved in that building. And I remember hearing a story that when Chad Henne was like, I'm retiring, they're like, hey, Chad, can you help us find a backup quarterback? So I think he did some interviewing for them. Like, that's the type guy. Like, when you watch Flacco, now Flacco's, probably shouldn't be starting, but he's another one of those guys. You just want him around. Jameis, look at the career Jameis has kind of cut out for. Look at Gardner Minshew. People just like Gardner Minshew. Now, if Gardner Minshew's got to start for you, you got problems. But I bet if you ask Andy and Patrick and Nagy, like, we love Gardner. He's awesome. Great vibes in the meeting room. Helps everyone study. Good film breakdown guy. We like him around. Couple other things. I don't think I did a good job last night. Sometimes, when we just do these instant reactions, I'm thinking the next day, I'm like, I wish I would have said that. I don't know if Gutekunst and LaFleur get enough credit. We talked a lot about this, the big news today, but it was news today that Carson Wentz, I think the whole right side of his body just doesn't work. His pec, his shoulder, I mean, who knows if it'll ever work again, but he's out for the year. And when you make a decision with a quarterback, we always assume, like, the Chiefs traded Alex Smith to go with Patrick Mahomes. They thought he was going to be really good, but they didn't know until he played. Like, they never knew it was going to be this. I mean, they hoped he'd be an explosive player, a good player, could be a fringe Pro Bowl guy, and maybe have a higher ceiling. Turns out he's one of the great players of all time. But that move took balls. And anytime you make a quarterback move, let Sam Darnold go for J.J. McCarthy, like that takes stones. And I admire, like, it's so much easier to make suggestions than decisions. You make a decision, and you're going to be right or wrong based on the results. But the process of the decision, like, I understand most of these choices, beside the Atlanta Falcons and the way they set that up. But I understood what Minnesota did, and I think Gutekunst and LaFleur, it's easier to let a Sam Darnold go to Seattle or trade an Alex Smith to Washington than it is to trade Aaron Rodgers after he's won multiple MVPs on your watch and made you a lot of money and made you as a coach and GM look really good. And the conviction they had, and listen, like, it could have gone wrong. Even if Rodgers gets traded to the Jets and nothing changes, he still tears Achilles, his career is going like it's going. If Jordan Love sucks, which clearly is possible, right? Whenever you insert a young quarterback, whether he's a former first rounder or a fifth rounder, he might not be good at NFL football. It is clearly not a exact science, and we don't really have any more of a clue now than we did 30, 20, 15 years ago. We've been missing on these guys forever. And Jordan Love clearly was a wild card. Utah didn't play that much. You just didn't know. It's not like he came from a Power 4 conference. He was playing at Utah State against San Diego State's and New Mexico's. Now, he had a lot of physical ability, but you're kind of keeping your fingers crossed. Now, they had years working with him behind the scenes, but still, like, it hasn't, I don't think it could have gone much better To go from Rodgers to a guy that could just be one of the best quarterbacks in your conference and be a starting quarterback on a team several years later. I mean, they've gone to the playoffs back-to-back years. 2 years ago, they won a game on the road against the Cowboys. And this year, if they stay healthy, they are going to be a major threat to be the number one overall seed. So back like when Ted Thompson traded Favre to go with Rodgers, the nuts that takes, because the easy thing to do is, and most people in life, whether you work at Google, whether you work at Wells Fargo, or whether you work for an NFL team, are going to take the safe route for job preservation. I don't think anyone would have blamed them. And I don't think most people, even if they believed in Jordan Love, the easy thing would have been like, let's just try to keep Aaron Rodgers. Like, you know what? Let's break up. Let's do this. We will pull the trigger and trade you away and go with Jordan Love. And it's worked out. Obviously, his career's, I'm not saying it's been perfect, but you watch him the other night against Pittsburgh on the road on Sunday Night Football, just slinging it all over the place. And a couple things he did, like, we talk a lot about quarterbacks being reckless. And when I talk about that, it's more when they're running around. You got to be careful and you got to just hit the ground. You can't take these just unneeded shots. You are going to take shots when you're sitting in the pocket, holding on to that ball for that extra split second to get the guy open. And he did that multiple times last night. Like, his toughness was on full display. And I think there is not a GM, obviously, just this year, you would rather have Jordan Love than Aaron Rodgers. And over the last several years, it's not even a question, given that he's hurt and now old. And I'm not acting like Aaron Rodgers some scrub now. He's still a solid player. But what a move by those two guys. Brian Kelly, I want to hit on this really quick because I've been thinking a lot about this, having just been around coaches and, having been doing this for a living for a long time and watching all these guys' careers closely and, knowing a lot of guys that work for a lot of these coaches and, these scouts that go into these different programs. And I always ask them about, and listen, I get like unsolicited texts from guys that, Luke Fickell a couple weeks ago refuted a report that I guess it had come out, like Dane Brugler had said, like, it's really important to watch some of these guys during games for Wisconsin because he doesn't let you into practice. And then someone had asked Luke Fickell about that report, and Luke Fickell had called it a lie. He said, we're not North Carolina. And then my scouting buddy had sent me a text like, no, he 100% is. No one's allowed to watch his practices. He's like, not only is Fickell disliked by most NFL teams because he's not a likable guy, but he's a liar. And I was like, I didn't know. I just assumed Fickell's like kind of like a Mike Vrabel. They're like, no, people can't stand the guy. And clearly Brian Kelly, and I think Belichick can be used as an example too, are people that when their teams were winning, like Notre Dame or the New England Patriots, didn't like the guy. They're not likable humans, but you're winning and you respect their ability to put you in a position to win more, right? We all, I'm sure many of you listening, depending on what business you're in, do deals, do partnerships, work with people that you do not like and honestly probably can't stand. But if it's financially beneficial and you are literally making money because of it, and the guy's not like a criminal or whatever, you just kind of suck it up and deal with it. Called life. But when you don't win, or in my example, when you aren't making money, you're like, I ain't doing this shit. No way. Well, why do you think everyone's turned on Belichick over the last 4 or 5 years? Because that act, when you're absolutely miserable, you have no personal relationship with any of these guys, specifically your players, it's not going to work. And this is not the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, where you could just be like that and no one ever pushes back. Now, I'm a big believer that I think it's overrated a little bit, like different generations. I think anyone worth their salt wants to be pushed to their highest level of potential. And I think athletes are no different than whatever we do, that when you're around the right guy that establishes a relationship with you that you know can take you to another level, you can deal with some quote-unquote hard coaching, right? Like Dan Campbell, Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, LaFleur, those guys are quote unquote lighting people up when they need to be. But they also have a personal relationship with them. I bet if you went to a Kirby Smart practice, you're going to hear some F bombs. But I bet if you went to the cafeteria when he's hanging out with the linebackers or the DBs, like he knows them all pretty well. Even Nick Saban's a good example where he screamed at people constantly. And I've known a lot of people that worked for him. It was difficult, but you knew that it was going to work. Nick Saban could not have done what he did if he was winning 6 games a year. Everyone would have quit and there would have been a mutiny. But they were winning so big, everyone just bought in. That's the problem with Brian Kelly in LSU. I thought that everyone made a little bit too big a deal about the accent and the family and just everything about that. But looking back, he was a fish out of water. And he tried to pretend he was something he was not. And I saw a bunch of people, I feel like I follow a lot of people from Louisiana. They're like, this notion that you got to be from Louisiana to coach this team is bullshit. You could be from wherever. You just need to have the passion, the energy, and the want to be here. And people will embrace you. And obviously, you got to win games. It almost felt like Brian Kelly never dove headfirst into the deep end. Like, I consider, people like Nick Saban's not, quote, from the South. I mean, he's from West Virginia. He had coached at LSU. But several years in, he felt part of Alabama. And like Alabama felt part of him. They were intertwined. And you felt Brian Kelly, it felt like he was just a hired mercenary. Almost a lot like some of these players. Look at Florida State. They have been kings of just buying players on the transfer portal. And when it works, it's awesome. When it doesn't, guys just tap out. Because there's not like that sweat equity and loyalty. You look last year at Ohio State making the run. What did they have going for them? They had a lot of guys who had been there for years. Everyone was rowing in the same direction. They were all part of the same deal. Where it felt like Brian Kelly, it's weird. I know he had LSU on his shirt, but he always felt like, I don't know, the red-faced guy from Boston that was the Notre Dame coach. That was just doing this because they gave him $90 million. And it felt like he could never really be himself. And part of being himself is just, he's truly an asshole. Like there's just, and I think sometimes like some people, that's just their personality. Like not everyone's just super friendly. And that's fine. Just be true to yourself. Be authentic to who you are. One of Lane Kiffin's things that he's doing really well right now, he just feels pretty authentic. He's kind of a goofy, making jokes, not that serious all the time. That's I think, kind of his personality. I remember when I was scouting and he was the USC head coach, he was actually, back then, he tried to act like Belichick. Didn't talk to anybody, was kind of a dick, tried to put on this like front. And it didn't really work. And it was a disaster for him. And in life, when people think you're an asshole, if you are not the best of the best, either the top moneymaker, the top coach, the top player, they will turn on you first. So Brian Kelly, like Billy Napier's a good example. People like Billy Napier down in Florida. Why? Nice guy. People got along with him. So he got a longer rope, even though it clearly was not working. Life's not that complicated. People want good people to have good things happen to them. When people think you're a bad guy, which Brian Kelly, the display he had on the sideline was like, just a bad guy. You're just a bad guy. We all know him. It's like, yeah, that's James, man. Just stay away from him. Do not do a deal with that guy. A lot of shady stories about him. We all know these people. Even if you could have a one-on-one interaction, maybe over beer, and he's cool, you just saw that guy. You just do not trust this guy. Brian Kelly looks like a guy you don't trust. And obviously, Jimmy Sexton, being his agent, got him a lot of money. He did a good job at Notre Dame, but it just felt like, I don't know. I mean, just a fish out of water, and he could just resort to what he knows best. And that's just being a royal dick to everybody. And you can pull that off when you're winning 11 games and going to the college football playoff. You can pull that off when you're kicking ass and taking names. When you're winning 7 games and your team's unwatchable and you're not only not from that area, but you're from a long way away where people talk differently, they vote differently, and overall they just think about life differently, they're going to turn on you. And they turned on him immediately. And most people had already turned on him, but that switch gets flipped so much faster when people don't like you. And last but not least, I meant to talk about this last night, but you know, about 3 or 4 days ago, my wife shows me her phone. She's like, "Do you see this about the guy on the Jets?" I'm like, "What?" He needs a kidney transplant. I'm like, "Who? What?" And then I read it, and Nick Mangold basically gave out this plea. Maybe it was last week that he had this kidney disease since I think it was going on close to 20 years. They had known about it, but it had gotten really bad, and he needed a transplant. And obviously, then the news broke over the weekend that he had died. And I think as you get older, I've lost a parent. I've lost people that I went to high school with or grew up with. As you age, you experience life, but it never gets easier. And I've never met Nick Mangold, but I think one enduring fact of the sport of football is that offensive lineman, there is a relatability to that position, especially to certain individuals in that group, that is just undeniable. And there was like this. He almost felt like a television character with the big beard and just the big smile. But Wikipedia, I mean, he went to the Pro Bowl every year. He was a multiple time All Pro. Like he was an ass kicking team captain for a team that for a couple years was one of the best teams in the league. And he was obviously the anchor of that team because it sure wasn't the quarterback. And you see guys as you get older, you start, especially for me, I'm about to have a child, you see 1984 dash 2025, and you go, God, I was born in 1984 too. And it really humanizes just the situation of like this guy that had the world by the balls, this All American, former first round pick, I don't know, potential Hall of Famer, who was universally loved from Ohio State to the NFL to every single person that I have seen that played with Nick Mangold was in tears. And you just see this guy, he had 4 children who I haven't Googled their ages, but I would imagine they're relatively young. And it just rips at your heart that I said this when I got involved in the NFL, and I remember when I was in college in like the mid 2000s, a lot of guys were getting in trouble, right? Or at least it felt like that. And that was when Roger Goodell kind of took over like the judge, jury, and executioner. He started suspending guys, and he became like the hammer. And I remember working in the NFL. I'm like, I don't think that. And I remember going to the combines. Like, I think most of these guys are pretty good guys. I think most of these individuals, if they weren't playing football, would be high level contributing members of society. And the amount of guys in this upper percentage, there's a small percentage of America that is able to do this, and a tiny, tiny percentage of them are knuckleheads and idiots. Most of them are like pretty trustworthy, high level guys, and then the super high level guys of that group were like, this guy could probably run a bank. I mean, this guy, thank God this guy is not a podcaster because I probably wouldn't have a job. And that's kind of what it felt like for Nick Mangold. And there was obviously, Rex had a pretty good couple minutes on TV the other day. I think any offensive lineman, the number one thing they want to be known for is toughness. And that feels like a defining attribute for a guy that you don't become a 7 time Pro Bowler. And this is before the Pro Bowl became fake, like when guys went and multiple time All Pro at center and not be one of the toughest guys in the league. But it also shows you, and this humanizes that I think we all can relate to. If Nick Mangold in his prime was in a bar fight, like there wouldn't be that many people that he would have trouble with. Yet in life, when something goes wrong inside of you, it doesn't matter how tough or how big or how strong or how many Pro Bowls you made, you're in trouble. And it just sucks. And I don't really know what else to say beside I just think you saw the NFL community. was pretty rocked by losing Nick Mangold at 41 years old. Uh, just a pretty legendary figure of his era.